And it is a stuffed animal that's in the middle of this grassy spot that was a unicorn with purple hair and purple hooves. And I was just like,
There's your sign.
here's your sign.
Hey, friends, and welcome back to Soul Snacks. We are so excited about today's topic because we're talking about signs, synchronicities, and all those little nudges from the universe that make you say, okay, this just can't be a coincidence.
If you've ever wondered whether the universe is whispering or maybe yelling at you, this episode is for you.
So, Becca, I want to ask you to kick it off. How would you personally define a sign or a synchronicity, or a sign versus a synchronicity?
I love that question, Cami, because I think there's kind of a few different things, right? There's signs, there's synchronicities, and then I also think there's like symbols, right? And I think in some ways they can all be sort of the same thing. They're all these kismet, karmic messages or insights that we're getting from something outside of ourselves, right? But I also feel like they vary a little bit based on, and this is my own experience with them, right? But I feel like they vary a little bit based on what the intention is sort of behind it. So for example, like signs, when I feel like I've really received a sign from universe or source or God, whatever you want to name it, I've been really intentional about having asked for a sign. And I'm talking very specific situations. And I know we'll get into some of the stories and whatnot, but very specific, show me this if this is going to happen, or this is the right path, or this is the decision, that sort of thing. So I feel like signs are very much hey, I've asked for a sign. I've asked for the universe to show me something, and it does. Synchronicities, again, kismet, karmic connection, but I feel like those are a bit more random, where maybe there's definitely going to be a message to them or some sort of insight, but I feel like those are the absolutely unplanned, the things that just kind of come out of nowhere that carry meaning to them, right? And that you can interpret and figure out how it kind of corresponds to your life. And then I think there's symbols, and symbols are like everything has a symbol or symbolism to it, right? But I feel like symbolism or symbols can also be things that is the universe asking us to really pay attention. Like the universe is trying to send us something, whether like very visual or whatnot, where it's saying, hey, there's some meaning behind this, and I want you to be paying attention. And so it's not that I asked for it. It's not that it just kind of happened out of nowhere, but it feels really intentional for the timing or the space or wherever I'm at. And it's the universe kind of initiating the nudge, saying, slow down, pay attention. I've got something for you to kind of, pay attention to.
Well, and just even to kind of guide you along your path, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yes.
What about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would say exactly this. I would describe them almost identical to the way that you did, because when I have gotten signs, it's typically after I've asked for a sign, and a very specific answer comes. And then with symbols, those are things like you might see a feather laying in the road, or you might see the number repeating numbers. I see 1111 all the time. In fact, that's why I have a necklace that says 1111, because that is a repeating number in my life. Or even, you're on a walk and you see a specific type of bird, or those to me are the symbols that pop up that are random, but I also think it's almost like the universe is giving you a message and you need to pay attention.
Oh, totally.
And then synchronicities, yeah, absolutely random. I mean, they're meaningful connections that happen in the least likely places, and they end up almost being like a defining moment that might change the course of your life, or at least make you think about something differently, or start something in your life that you didn't know was even coming. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I would agree. We have very similar ideas on those three things.
Yeah. Love it. Well, so, okay. You mentioned, we are both so excited about this
I
episode for
know.
everyone listening too, because we like a lot, we'll text people or text each other back and forth like, oh my gosh, this happened, or you'll never believe what I saw. Or we're sending pictures of the signs that we got. So Cami, let's share, like, what are some of the more recent or really important, let's start. Do you want to break it down and do signs and then synchronicities and symbols and kind of
Sure.
compare?
Yeah.
Okay. So when
Yeah.
you think of some of the signs that you've gotten, what are some of tell us the story.
Okay. Oh, I've got so many, and especially within the last year and a half because I think I started paying attention more because I was going through a rough patch in my life. My brother was, I was a caregiver for my brother who had cancer and was, close to passing. I was really down and out and distraught and sad, and I was really starting to ask for signs from my father, who actually passed away several years ago. But I was started to become curious if he was around, if he was seeing what was going on, and if he could potentially start giving me any kind of reassurance that everything was gonna be all right. So, my dad was a big Disney fan, and he loved Mickey Mouse. He used to collect all the pins that a lot of Disney enthusiasts collect and put on their hats, and he used to go every year. He took my son, I mean, it was a big deal for him. So, I just decided one day that I wanted to start seeing Mickey Mouse because I knew it was something that you don't see all the time, would be completely random if I did see it, and it would, to me, be reassurance that he heard me and would start showing up. So not even a couple days later, the first time I saw Mickey, I was shopping at Aldi and I turned down the junk aisle or the I shouldn't call it the junk aisle. It's kind of like the everything that you could ever want aisle of random things. And there was a giant, well, pretty big Mickey Mouse with a big smile on his face, random pillow in the aisle. So I stepped back. I actually took a picture of it and was smiled and was like, okay, thanks, Dad. And then from there, I started seeing Mickey Mouse literally everywhere. And so I don't know if it was my reticular activation system in my brain that was just looking for it,
Mhm.
or if it was really just my dad communicating with me in fun ways. But from that point forward, he never left my side. And I was getting Mickey Mouse signs every time I turned around in the most random places. I would go on a walk and I would see I passed by some little garden Mickey Mouse, gosh, I don't know, pavers in someone's yard and in an area that I passed by hundreds of times and never noticed before. I just happened to look down to my right and there was a Mickey and Minnie Mouse one. People would walk into showings that I had with Mickey Mouse shirts on. Recent one that I had, which was really awesome, was actually this past August when we were at my son's wedding reception back in Iowa. And I was talking about how I was telling my ex-husband about how I have been asking, I'd been asking for dad for signs all throughout, Jeff's battle and how he kept showing up. He kept showing up. And my ex was like, oh my gosh, I have something. And he goes into this back room and he digs out this painting. It was actually like a picture that he found at a store somewhere that was collecting dust in the corner of the room. And it was a picture of Mickey and Minnie Mouse kissing. So he went and got a nail and hung it up on the wall and we were laughing about it, and I said, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody shows up today with a Mickey Mouse shirt on. I mean, it's so obvious that he's here today with us celebrating my son and his new wife. And not even 15 minutes later, my son's best man walks in with a Mickey Mouse t-shirt on.
Of course.
Completely random. So he was there, and to me, it couldn't be more obvious than that,
Mhm,
right? I
mhm.
couldn't be more obvious. And one other thing I just want to say, really when we were about a month out from my brother passing, I was really down and I was scrolling on Facebook one day and I just happened to scroll and all of a sudden there was a picture of Mickey Mouse leaned over on his elbows like this, looking very sad. And it said, everybody needs their daddy sometimes.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh.
just a picture of Mickey Mouse, and that was the caption. And I looked at it, I froze, I showed it to my brother who was sitting next to me, and he just started to cry. He was like, oh my gosh, that is like, you can't make this up,
That
right?
makes me wanna cry right now.
Yeah. So, I have no doubt that my dad was with me throughout that whole thing and helped my brother in his transition, and
Mhm.
he hasn't left. I see Mickey all the time. He still sends me signs in the most random fun places, and my dad was a really fun, loving, great guy, and it's almost like the times that they come up are so funny. So it's just another memory and I guess testament to the fact that, your loved ones never really leave. They're actually with
Mhm,
you all the time.
mhm.
So, but I'd love to hear one of your stories. Tell me about what you've been seeing.
Well, okay, so before I do that, there's a couple things that you said that I wanna kind of reflect back on, because I think one of the things is that with signs, Mickey Mouse is a very specific thing, right?
Mhm.
It was a very specific thing that you had asked for that continues to show up, and I feel like with signs, that is part of it, right? when it's something really specific, whether we're asking for it, it's the thing that just keeps showing up, showing up, showing up. So I feel like with signs, having it be specific is a thing. I also feel like when you were the reticular activation, I'm not even gonna be able to say it, whatever the term was. I know what it means, but the words, whatever. Or the confirmation bias, because honestly, what's the harm? You said signs are about the reassurance, right? And I think
Mhm.
it's okay that if we ask for a specific sign and then we start seeing it all over the place, that if it is reassurance, right? And if maybe our brain does start to look for it, and so we do start to notice things more, but I don't think there's a problem with that, because
No.
if anything, it's part of our, I think it's part of our intuition, right? Where it's okay, I'm paying attention to these things. And if they bring some sense of peace or some sense of, reassurance, then that's okay. If my brain's seeking those things out, it just means that maybe somewhere in my intuition, somewhere in my nervous system, whatever it is, we're looking for that. I feel like confirmation bias is something that comes up a lot in in different ways, but I think especially when we're talking about like spiritual or spirituality or universal truths or astrology or whatever it is. And I think
Right.
it's important to just like, it's okay if it's there, right?
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And in those instances, I believe they were from my dad. Like
Mhm.
it was the feeling that I got, the reassurance that I got that he was communicating with me in his own way.
Mhm.
It just felt so real that
Mhm.
I don't doubt for 1 second. But I know, yeah, the confirmation bias is a big thing, and people are like, "Oh,
Mhm.
it's just woo woo, and you're just thinking you're seeing stuff." Well, you know, there is some truth to what
Mhm.
happens in our brains, but I also believe that there's something beyond that that we can't see that
Mhm.
I can fully feel emotionally, and I think you can't really define that.
Yes, and when there is feeling connected to a sign or to synchronicity or whatever we're talking about, like when that physical feeling is there too, that that I think speaks volumes to the truth of it, right? To the
Mhm.
message behind it and whatnot.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So
hmm.
tell me, I know you've had some and I know we've talked about some of yours, but share with our listeners maybe something specific that's happened to you.
Yeah, I was, as we were kind of preparing for things and whatnot, I was thinking about a couple different situations, and there were two. I feel like everything for me happens on my walks, like on
Yeah.
my nature walks or just on the walk with the dog. And there was one day where I, I honestly can't even remember what the decision was about, but it was a very like I know I feel like I'm always trying to make decisions around things. But I was sitting at home and I was thinking, okay, universe, show me a sign, like show me this very specific thing. And I said, show me a purple unicorn within the next 48 hours if this is the direction that I'm supposed to take. And I wanted it to be something that like, yeah, there's unicorns all over the place, right? It's kind of like Mickey Mouse. You can see it, but the reality is like I don't see a lot of purple unicorns in my day to day all the time, right? And so I was like, okay, that's the first thing that had come, that it was the first thing that came to mind when I was, okay, show me this. It was like purple unicorn. I thought, okay, we'll go with it. Right. So the next day, I'm on a walk with the dog and we're walking through the neighborhood that's next to ours and whatnot. And I'm just kind of like wandering, minding my own business, listening to my neoclassical instrumental music that I listen to on my walks. And I'm coming up and there's something on not on the sidewalk, but on the grassy part next to the sidewalk, the median between the road and the sidewalk. And I kid you not, I'm walking up to it and I'm like, what is that? And it is a stuffed animal that's in the middle of this grassy spot that was a unicorn with purple hair and purple hooves. And I was just like,
There's your sign.
here's your sign. It was one of those moments where you're like, get
What?
out of here. This
Right.
actually happened. Like something so random, so specific. And so I got a picture and I'm thinking about it. We should post some of the pictures since we both take pictures of like all of our stuff. We'll have to post some of the pictures of our signs and symbols on Instagram
Oh
just so you
yeah.
can see them. But yeah, it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, you're listening to me. Like the things, like there's some sort of connection where I'm putting things out into the world and the universe is listening back to me. And the other short one that I'll share is that on a walk again, it was in the springtime and there's this beautiful cherry tree that is like on one of the roads nearby. And it was a morning where like the breeze was just flowing. It was absolutely beautiful. And so for listeners, I don't have biological children. So I am a stepmother and the topic of the topic of having a child is something that my husband and I talk about all the time, but we're both a little bit older. And so, there's just a lot that comes with it. But I remember in the spring, I was on a walk and I was thinking about this and thinking about having a child. And I had just been listening to an episode about like like the soul contracts we have with like our essentially like spirit babies almost. And about how like they pick us and they'll let us know when they're ready. And I'm not doing the episode justice because it goes into a lot more depth than that. But so I'm on this walk and I was coming up to this tree and I thought it was just so beautiful. And I'm like, okay, I need a sign, like, give me a sign, and I'm specifically looking at this tree that, that a child is somebody is ready to, like, come into our lives, right? That someone is, that a child would want to, have a contract with us. And at that very moment, so there's like the tree had just been blowing. There was one petal that fell off of the tree and blew right in front of my face. Like literally like went right in front of me to where it was one of those things that's like had it been 3 seconds before or 3 seconds after or anything, but it happened at that moment, and I just lost it. I was, like, crying on my walk. I'm just the
Oh,
emotion that came over me was just like, "Oh my
wow.
god," just these little things where it's yeah, you just yeah. So, it was that was a really, like, pivotal one where
Oh,
it was
wow.
just kind of a little nudge, I would say.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's so cool.
but that and I guess that's also I mean, again, like, we had talked about how there's, science and synchronicities and symbolism, and they all kind of merge together because that could have also been something very like more synchronistic, right? Like being in the
Right.
right place, right time, that sort of thing. So when you think of a synchronicity for you,
Mhm.
like does that look different? And what might be a situation where it's been more synchronistic?
Yeah, for me, for synchronicities, it's usually when I have a random connection with somebody that I was not expecting that was to benefit one or the other. So, I'll give an example. So, way back years ago when I used to work in radio, we used to get a lot of trade certificates and things like that. And I was working with it was a tow truck company, and they had given us some certificates for a free towing, like, if you ever got into trouble. I mean, super random, right? What are the chances you're gonna use that? And I just happened to have one. The guy was like, "Here, have one, keep this on you." Well, I put it in my purse. I didn't think about that thing for months, and I happened to be at the mall one day and was walking out to my car, and right next to me, there was a young couple, and their car wouldn't start. And they were all upset, and you could tell, like, they were driving, like, an old beat up car. They were stressing out, and I got out of my car, or I walked up to them and I said, "Hey," I said, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Well, we have to get a tow truck and we can't afford it and we can't get the car started." And I was like, "Well, you're in luck because I happen to have a free tow certificate in my purse." And I was able to give them a free ticket to tow so that they could get their car home, which I was just like, wow, if that's not the universe throwing something at both of us, I don't know what
Seriously.
is. It was unbelievable, and I felt so good that I was able to help them in that moment, and yeah, remember thinking, "Well, boy, that was so synchronistic. I can't even believe how random and how powerful and how amazing that was
Mm,
for both of us," you know?
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
good timing.
Yeah. The universe's timing is always on point, so
Yes.
it
Nobody
kind
wants
of
to be stuck without a tow truck.
right. Exactly. What about you?
Mm.
Have you ever had anything like that happen or any, like, connections like that?
I feel like the one that's most significant that happened was when we were in Ireland. So, for listeners, my husband and I got married in March of 2024, and we were fortunate enough to go to Ireland. And a lot of people ask why Ireland and whatnot. And my maternal lineage is Irish. So it was, and he was like, heck yeah, this is going to be great. Let's go to Ireland. He was down for whatever. So we ended up going to Ireland, and we had 40 people that made the trip over to Ireland to be a part of our wedding. And so we honeymooned after the wedding, and we were down in a place called Killarney, which is kind of in the southwest portion. And it was like the one day that we had scheduled an actual guided tour to go out and do the Ring of Kerry in this like coach where they take you around. It's like a full day thing. And my husband woke up with food poisoning
Oh, no.
and was not going anywhere. outside of the
No.
hotel room. And so he was like, "Just go." And I thought, we'll figure it out another time. I'm not gonna go for 8 or 9 hours on this trip around the thing by myself while you're sick. I'll just bum around town and go and look at some other stuff. So I ended up at a place called Muckro's House. Highly, highly recommend if you ever find yourself in Killarney, Ireland. But so I'm going through this beautiful old, I think it's 18th century house, maybe older, and I make it up to the second floor and there is a tour guide essentially who stands up on the floor and gives some historical background to the house and to the national park and stuff. And so there's a family of 4 in front of me and I start I say eavesdropping, but it was kind of hard to like not pay attention, right? To the things that she's telling them. And she's talking about how, during the famine, there were so many people that left Ireland because they had to. And now to see, generations later, people come back and bring families and just how special that is. And so this family moves along and I go up to this woman, her name was Paula. And I said, meanwhile, I'm like starting to cry and get emotional. And I said to her, I said, I just wanted to say, I just heard what you had were talking to that family about. And my husband and I just got married up in Northern Ireland, technically, near the area of the island and country where my mom's family was from, or where my lineage was from. And I said, we just had this wedding and da da da. And I said, it just felt like a kind of a full circle moment to hear you talk to that family and share what, you had said with them. And she said, she starts telling me how incredibly beautiful it is for not only for us to come back and visit the space where, my maternal lineage was from, but that to bring people and to come back and celebrate coming together and marriage and family
Mm.
and love. And she was saying how, my ancestors that when they left, they didn't know what they were looking for. They didn't know what their life was going to be. All they knew is that they were leaving family behind, leaving friends behind, leaving what they had known behind. And for the people that stayed in Ireland, they were saying goodbye to people that they didn't know if they would ever see again. And so there was this grief that came with that, right? And she said, by you bringing people back and coming back to this place and celebrating marriage and life and love, she's like, your ancestors are celebrating. Like you brought back
Oh,
everything that they were uncertain of and the things that they lost. And like, I mean,
oh,
I could
were
start
you
crying about it
bawling at
right
this
now.
minute? I
I
would have
know,
been
but
bawling.
I was. Oh my gosh. And then we're like hugging. And it was just one of those
Oh,
things where I'm like, had he, not gotten sick, had we not done the thing, had I not been up on the second floor behind this family to hear what she had said, I never would have had probably one of the most impactful conversations that I've had in either all of my life or at least in the very, the last 10 years of my life. It was just so meaningful and just brought that whole trip and the whole wedding like full circle. Like there was a
circle.
bigger reason that I was just almost pulled back to that place for this bigger reason of, what that meant for my ancestors and lineage and stuff like that. So,
That is so cool.
yeah, that was a powerful one for me for sure.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Was she an Irish woman?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and she was a historian and
So
a
she had the
poet.
brogue.
Oh my gosh, but her words, I mean, I could have sat there and listened to her all day too because she's telling me this and it's poetic in nature and then this beautiful Irish accent and I was just like,
Oh.
"Can we be friends?" Can I just like call you from the States or come back and visit or take you to tea? And she was sharing, she had said, she's like, go light a candle and go celebrate, go to the pub and get a pint and toast to your
Yeah.
ancestors. And just this whole thing that, I mean, I got back to the hotel room and I was like, Mark, I am so glad you were sick today. I'm sorry that you're miserable, but let me tell you about my day.
Oh, that is so cool. Oh,
Yeah,
I
that
yeah,
was a big one.
I love the Irish people. They are just
Ugh.
amazing. Bill and I went there for our honeymoon and had the best time. And there's so much history there. I mean, that place is so rich with history. It's just you can feel it the minute your plane lands, you know?
Oh, totally. The talk about and I had heard that from people. They're like, there's something that when you get off of that plane,
Mhm.
there is something about that land that just captivates you and you feel it,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it's the mysticism or the magic or just the strength of the people and the outlook of the people and all the history that they have navigated. There is something so incredible about that place that,
Oh.
I mean, I was gonna say we joke, but I don't actually feel like it's a joke at this point about somehow trying to get back there for a year or 2 or long term or something, at least go back and visit again.
Oh, yeah, us too. It's definitely a special place, and I would love to go back again. We had such a blast when we were there.
Yeah, I
So,
know. A group trip.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so then okay, so we kinda talked about signs, we talked about, synchronicities, but what about, like, symbols?
Yeah, so I actually have a really good example for this one. This was another one of those just moments that kind of took my breath away. I tell you, I must have a really good connection to the universe because when the universe speaks to me, it's very, very strong. Like it's hard to not notice, you know? So again, this was this past summer, actually. We were about to celebrate my son's marriage in August, and we had rented this little cabin for the week up on a lake here in Michigan before the wedding. So we had, kind of the week leading up to the wedding was a little bit of vacation where we could hang out with friends, family, and everything leading up to that Saturday, which was the wedding. And we get to this little B&B. It's got a little dock leads out to a pontoon boat. We're sitting out on the patio, and we were talking about my brother because he passed in January and he was really, really tight with my son. I mean, my son loved him. They just had a really special connection and bond. And we were having some conversations about him and how we wished that he was here and he was missing the wedding. And I was like, no, I believe that he's with us in spirit. And my son agreed. He's like, yeah, absolutely. He's here. There's no way he'd miss this. Well, we kept talking, kept talking. And then a little later on that night, I was just kind of enjoying my view and I look out at the dock and I'm like, what is that? I'm like, what in the world? Now, let me just go back. My brother was a forester for 30 years. And so he spent a lot of time in the woods and he loved birds more than anything. He was a huge bird lover to the point where he learned how to be able to mimic whistles of birds and he could call birds, random wild birds. I've watched him do it. He would call them and they would come and land on his hands and he could feed them from his hands.
No way.
And I have a picture of him holding 2 hawks side by side. He's got 2 hawks on either side of him, and he's literally holding him in his hand. In fact, we blew one of them up because he just had this way with birds and woodland animals. It was insane.
Wow.
And he loved hawks, Cooper's hawks and black hawks and all of them. That was kind of like his thing because they're such beautiful birds and they fly and they're big and they're grand. And so anyway, so I'm sitting outside and I'm like, "What is that?" And so I get up and I walk to the edge of the dock and stuck straight up in the I don't even know how they got it. It was like in the crack of the wood at the top of the dock was one single hawk feather, like a Cooper's hawk feather because it was brown and white with the stripes on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got chills and I'm like, well, Jeff is definitely here. Like there
Oh my
is no
gosh.
question. Uh, that is completely a sign that he's here. And 2 weeks later, when we did the reception in Iowa, we're out setting up everything in the yard and getting the reception ready. And I look up and there's a huge hawk just circling around above us. So, again, to me, I didn't specifically ask for a sign,
Yeah.
but we were having a conversation and somehow he found a way to show up and let us know he was there.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
That is, and I'm like, I didn't even know, I'll be honest, I didn't even know what a Cooper's hawk was, but I found a Cooper's hawk feather on a walk, like, maybe 2 months ago. And I was like, "What kind of feather is this?" They're beautiful.
They're
I mean, they're
beautiful.
just striking, and, like, once you know, you're like, "Okay,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is," you know?
Well, and I
Hmm.
see them all the time. I see them a lot on my walks through the woods, specifically around that same area where I did spread some of my brother's ashes in the
Mhm.
woods that I walk in around here. And I do often see Cooper's hawk feathers in the woods while I'm walking. So I know he's always very close and always sending little signs. And we talked about it before he died. Like, you got to
Mhm.
make sure you send me signs and they're right in my face. So I know, it's not just me thinking they're there, but I know that they're actually from you. So,
Yeah. It's gotta make
he,
you feel good when you're out in the woods too. You know, it's like
yeah.
that intention, I don't wanna say intentionality, but just knowing that he's there, right? Like this
Yeah.
extra, whether it's safety or security, excuse me, or just connection to him, while that it's a space you can go to
Hmm.
when you do want to connect with them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The woods are kind of like, I always say the woods are my religion, right? I
Mhm.
love, like you. I notice a lot of things on my walk. That's really how I clear my head every day and just get some
Mhm.
time to just kind of center myself. And I have had a lot of different things happen in the woods that I find very interesting in terms of just feeling like the universe is speaking to me in some way or some
Mhm.
regard, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really kinda cool and wild when that happens because it's so I mean, if you get the just the emotional feeling that you get from something like that is you can't even really describe it because
Mhm.
you just know. You just know
Mhm.
that somebody is there with you.
Mhm. And I don't
So
know what it is about nature especially, but I feel like so much of it and again, maybe it's because like, you and I are always out in nature, right? And I know we've both shared examples that aren't necessarily nature related, like a purple unicorn and Mickey Mouse, but I do feel like so many of the things, especially with the symbolisms that come through in nature. So, like, one that comes to mind for me was last fall. We were going my husband and stepdaughter and I were going up north, and we were just kinda taking a weekend away, and I don't remember how it came up, but she was talking about how at one point she had made a comment about owls and just, that owls being a sign or something. And then I had started seeing owls like everywhere. I love to go thrift shopping and antique shopping, and all of a sudden there's owl figurines and there's owls artwork and there's owls just everywhere, right? And then was we were in a or I was in a bathroom up north and they had owls painted all over the bathroom, and I was like taking pictures and sending, oh my gosh, look at this owl, and I saw this owl, right? And at one point she said, I think owls are more of a something for you and dad. She's like, I don't see owls the way that you do. Like I don't see them as often. And so Mark and I were on a walk one night, and I mean, we live in the city, right? We were like in Grand Rapids, and we were on a walk and heard an owl, which was
Mm,
random because that's not
mhm,
a bird that we usually hear. And it wasn't
mhm.
nearby, but close enough to where you could hear it, but not too close. And so during this time, my grandmother was passing away. And she was the matriarch in all sense of the word for my dad's side of the family, the mother of 10 children, very just I mean, her family was her life, right? Cooking meals, hosting the holidays, doing that was her thing. And she was passing away over the course of these like 3 or 4 weeks where I kept seeing owls and kept seeing stuff. And then she ended up passing away. And shortly thereafter, Mark and I are both at home, but he had taken the garbage out and he called me, right? Like I'm in our house and he's in the driveway and he calls me and he said, Becca, come out of the house very slowly. And I'm like, "What are you on? What is going on? Do I need to be concerned? Is there something dangerous?" You
Yeah.
can't tell
What?
me, the person who is constantly paranoid and full of anxiety most of the time. Like, you can't tell me those things. I need some
Right.
context. And he said, "Come out the back, walk up the driveway very slowly." So I'm like, "Okay, weirdo." So I go out the back door, I'm like, have my phone with me, and I'm walking up, like tiptoeing up our driveway, and I see him standing. Our neighbor has a massive sycamore. Our neighbor at one point had told me that it's one of the 3 oldest sycamores in all of Grand Rapids. I mean, this thing is huge. And I'm getting closer to Mark, and I see him looking up, and I look up, and there is this massive barred owl
Oh,
sitting in
wow.
this tree. I mean, it is, 20 feet away from us, sitting on this branch, just staring down at us.
Oh,
It was one
wow.
of those things. I mean, seen, I've never seen an owl that close in person in my life, maybe at a wildlife sanctuary or something like that. But it was just this, I mean, his eyes were just captivating. Like you looked like you were looking into the soul of like and beyond, it
Oh,
was the most beautiful bird I have ever seen, and it was just staring at us, and then it ended up flying away, but so, of course, it at some point, I'm like, "Okay, what is the symbolism?" Right? Like,
mhm.
I'm Googling and all the things, and so I feel like I mean, it was interesting that one of the symbols of owls does have to do with, like, death and transformation and the afterlife and stuff like that, and that when it was based around the time of my grandma passing away, it felt very it felt like it hit something. But I feel like I use that example too because owls weren't something that I was asking for a sign from, right? But
Right.
they just kept showing up and showing up and showing
Mhm.
up, and so I feel like in those cases, when there's these things that just keep showing up, they become a symbol, and then it's okay, what is the message? Like, what do you want me to pay attention to at this point? You know what I mean? So that was one that just kept showing up and showing up to where it was you couldn't not start paying attention to it, right?
Oh, yeah, and I think that brings up a really good point too, because if you start to see things repeating, right? Like you maybe, you were seeing owls a lot, like leading up to that moment of actually, like literally seeing one. I mean, it was a real life owl. The same thing happens with other things. And I often notice with repeating like numbers.
Mm,
I'm constantly seeing 1111 or 111 or 444. So whenever I see things like that, I always Google, what is the
mhm,
spiritual meaning of this? Because I want to know,
mhm,
what does this mean? And I can't tell you how many times I've looked it up and I like kind of think about my life and where I'm at and how it's such a specific message to that point in my life that is almost guiding me to make a next decision,
mhm, mhm,
with like 1111, that is a sign that is new beginnings. It's all
mhm,
about starting things fresh. It's about creative endeavors. It's about your connection with the divine. And I think that's all like so symbolistic of where I'm at in my life. I mean, right, we're starting a new podcast. It's a very creative endeavor. I do have a connection that I feel like I have with my dad and my brother, and I believe they're guiding me and helping me. And so I just think it's so interesting when you start to see those types of things and how they really truly can guide you in certain ways.
mhm,
Don't
mhm,
you feel like when you see things, I mean, and I know you've seen repeating numbers and things like that.
mhm.
Do you use them as a guide? Do you typically look up, what does this mean and kind of see what that means in your life?
I laugh because I'm like, literally every day. I just posted something on my Instagram last week about how, there's wild plants. I live in the city, and there's these random plants that start popping up all over the place. And my inclination is, okay, what kind of plant is this? And what is the symbolism? Like, I'm constantly looking at the symbolism for things. And again, it goes back to this, I like paying attention, and I think what's the harm in
Mhm.
wanting to learn more and wanting to connect to these symbols and being open to the messages that come through, I think especially now, like, there's no harm in doing that. So I'm sure some people, my husband in particular, or maybe my family is like, "Okay, Becca, we get it. There's a symbol, there's a sign, there's a meaning to this." But
Yeah.
that is, I would say, and this is not an exaggeration, I would say if not every day, every other day, I'm probably Googling something that is,
Mhm.
what's the symbolism of this, and looking at it from different ways. What's the spiritual? What's like in different cultures, all the
Oh,
different
yeah.
pieces. But I'm constantly looking. I think it's fun. And I think I learn a lot. And yeah, I sometimes wonder if that's a way that for me, it just maintains that open conversation, that open dialogue with whatever source is out there in control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just keeps the conversation open in a way. So I
Yeah, and I
definitely
think I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're fine.
I think that, for me, it's a way to stay connected, right? To
Mhm,
stay connected to my loved ones who have passed and to just have that reassurance that they are still here. Because I really do believe that once you pass, and I know there's, a lot of people who don't believe this, but I really believe that we don't really I think we're still here. I just think
mhm,
we're here in a different form, right?
mhm,
Because energy can never be destroyed. We know
mhm,
that. That's like one of the laws of nature, right?
mhm,
It just takes on different forms and it never really goes away. If, the physical body dies and the soul departs, it's really almost like you're here but you're just unbounded. Like you don't have the physical confines anymore, but your spirit and your essence is still there and you still are connected with your loved ones in some way. So I believe that
mhm.
wholeheartedly. And there's just too many things that have happened in my life for me to not believe it. And
Yeah,
so it is fun. It is fun.
yeah,
And it's a great way to get through some difficult times in your life when you're really questioning different decisions and different things that need to happen. Sometimes a sign it can be exactly what you need to get you through that.
yeah. So, okay, from like a very, practical or tangible side of things, like if someone wanted to start paying attention to these or wanted to look for signs or whatnot, how do they do it? Or what sort of, like what sort of practices could help get them to a spot where they're starting to pay attention more?
I think that the best way to do it is to think about that person that you want to connect with and think about what things were important to them in their lifetime. What did they love to do? Were there any things like that they were attached to or that they really loved or that you maybe there's something between the 2 of you that you shared? So maybe, I had a friend that was kinda asking me the same question. She's like, "Yeah, well, my mom and I used to go on this trip every year, and we used to go to" I'll just use Paris, and it was a special place for us. And I'm like, "Well, then ask to see an Eiffel Tower. Ask to see something that is very, very specific to what that person loved or the way that they connected with you, and just put it out into the universe. Say you want to see a sign, tell the universe what the sign is, and then just wait for a day or 2 and see what
Mhm,
happens. And I
mhm.
guarantee you, you are going to see something because it always happens when you ask for it. You have to be intentional, but it always seems to show up.
Well, and I love that, right? Because I think you do have to be intentional. You've mentioned being specific, right? And I think the other thing is not thinking too much about the sign, right? Whatever is the first thing that comes to mind, excuse me, I feel like you have to kind of trust that.
Mhm.
Now, of course, it's, if a robin is the first thing that comes to mind and you live in an area where there's robins everywhere,
Mhm.
maybe that might not be the thing, right? Because I mean, or who knows? I mean, honestly, it's such an individual and a personal thing. There is no right or wrong. It's interpretation and it's what's meaningful to you and whatnot. But that was one thing where for me, when I would thought, okay, a purple unicorn, I knew it wasn't going to be something that I would see often.
Mhm.
It
Sure.
it
Yeah.
was going to be a specific thing, but also random enough to where it would carry some meaning. So I think the intentionality behind it is certainly a big piece of it for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
And they will show up, trust me.
oh,
Once you
totally.
start asking and you have to trust, that's the other big piece of it, is when you
Mhm.
see something, you have to trust that that is a sign and don't second guess yourself because it's really easy to do that too.
Yeah. And to also ask when you see signs, try to pay attention not only to the sign, but how does it make you feel? Were you just thinking about something? Is there something in your life where this really catches on? Like to take a minute if you can and kind of sit with it and to ask some of those questions with yourself too, because I feel like that helps build that trust with it,
Oh,
right?
oh yeah, and even if you start to see sign or symbols too, like if you're
Yeah.
starting to notice things happening over and over again and it's like a repeating number or you're seeing a specific animal or flower or whatever it is, I would encourage, our listeners to look it up and see what the spiritual meaning is and see if maybe they're getting a sign from the universe that they didn't know they were getting.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. So I feel like that's probably a good spot to kind of to close off. So I think whether you think of them as divine nudges or meaningful coincidences or messages, what we can all agree on is that the signs remind us to slow down, to pay
Mhm.
attention, to have
Mhm.
a little trust in something outside of ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And I would even ask our anyone who's listening to this, I would love to see pictures of things that they've found or drop us a note in the comments and let us know like what are you seeing? What are some of the coolest things you've seen? I would love to see that.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll post some of the pictures of our signs and symbols on Instagram too. So feel free to drop them there or share some of the experiences that you've had there as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for listening. Can't wait till the next episode
Yeah,
and
until next time, take a moment for your own soul snack and stay open to the messages around you.
love it. Thanks
See ya.
guys.